Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Kraven the Hunter. Now, I have heard nothing but bad things, much like Madam Web before this and Morbius before that. They have continued to try to push the side characters within the Spider-Man universe. So, I had seen the trailers for Kraven and I did not know what to think of it. It was a much significantly shorter trailer than the Madam Web one. And after seeing the plentiful of reviews, I haven't actually watched them, I just saw the thumbnails and the titling suggesting that this movie was actually the worst among the three of these movies. And after watching it, I'm a little bit baffled. This appears to be the strongest of the three, so I'm very confused. Now, does that mean it's a good movie? I wouldn't say it's bad, but I don't know if I would either say it's good. It's kind of... We'll get into it. Anyways, the movie starts out in Russia. And we get... Kraven, once known as Sergei. He goes through a name change, but he's being imprisoned. We don't know what for, but after messing around with some of the inmates that are leading the bad operations of prison, he kills some of the top dogs, including taking a shark tooth and killing the boss and the people within. He then proceeds to parkour his way out using his already gifted abilities. And during his escape, he sees a wolf and he nods towards it, and its anger suddenly subsides. So this is already alluding to that he already has his powers. And he has somebody that works with him, some plain person. These are the sort of things that your intro into, like, a story where, like, not everything is going to be, detailed out. So it's usually within that time frame. After all, this is before the official credits even roll out, that the movie is doing all of these actions. Anyway, so we learn that his tattoo is fake and that he killed the prisoner that apparently he was personating. So it turns out that he wasn't really a prisoner after all. He has a younger brother, the Krasanovs, himself included, and they're getting picked up to go meet with their father. We cut to a young woman named Calypso, who gives her a tarot reading after she was sort of messing with them, and gives her a sort of reading to a degree, and a potion as well, and is given a vague message that whoever she gives this potion to will benefit and be healed among gaining abilities. Now, this isn't very well made apparent that once we cut to the school, this is actually a flashback. We're not given a little time scroll at the bottom or anything of that nature. So the movie is just really having surprisingly a little bit of faith in the audience, which is a good thing, I would assume, right? That we are going through a flashback now, including Calypso's point of view and the tarot reading as well. So, she's given her the potion with that healing ability, as I mentioned. And the father of the two siblings is giving the lesson about being a man, quote-unquote, to the younger son, who they're out hunting, and this is a very, very masculine seen as a thing in regards to, quote-unquote, well, what is manliness? Of course, that we're talking about gender and not necessarily about sex. I know that people still confuse these two words to this very day, and, conservatives tend to be illiterate, or they know what the word means and just refuse to accept what it means, or they pretend like, people with certain living styles are acting rather than trying to find their authentic selves. But here we are. That's your politics for this video. Anyway, so we see that while they're on their little excursion, that the two sons encounter a lion. Now, the father, the two sons are trying to keep their distance. The lion is sort of encircling them, but not attacking necessarily yet. It's sort of in defensive mode. However, like an idiot, the father decides to try to shoot the lion, in which the lion goes into attack mode and mauls the older son, aka what we'll learn to be as Kraven. Now, this type of attack would have likely killed him. He has bite marks and all of this. And Calypso wanders off, because she happens to be in the area, after their transport. Their parents are taking a tour. She's with them. She kind of wanders off and comes across the scene after the lion has decided to leave the son there. So she decides to give him a potion, and this is where the first, I will say, sort of convenience happens. Like a abrupt helicopter is brought in and gets him to safety. So that's that. So she gives him the tarot card, and we cut to him at the hospital from that point. Of course, the father suddenly blames him, Sergei himself, Kraven. And we also see that the mother had written a letter to him, Kraven, to be not like his father. And we even see further escalation as the father gaslights the younger son into believing that this was all the older brother's fault or whatever. He wasn't manly enough or whatever. Or, the younger son wasn't manly enough. So the father shows the mounted lion head to the son. Meanwhile, Kraven awakens and sees a falcon or some type of bird at his window. He sees this as some sort of calling, so he proceeds to take all of the money that he has, a passport and card, and runs off from home. He sees the potion vial drop and takes it with him. He manages to scurry to the roof and fall off, but due to his new powers that the vial has given him, he gets a safe landing. And leaves his brother with a final farewell of sorts, though that's far from the end of their story, as it would turn out. He ends up getting a boat ride to the Rustlands, where we see him encounter a stampede, but he's fully avoided by it. He goes into this forest dome, and this is presumably his hideout or headquarters, as we'll come to see later on. We see him make a spear and throw it, and start to chase deer and jump over a chasm to show off more of his ability. And he sees the bulls that that had circumvented him killed by some poachers. So he proceeds to use the knife of one of the poachers to kill them, and then you tackle the other one and punch him to death. We then finally cut to the present, when we're in a different location, where we see his brother has been called upon at some point. And Kraven is already waiting for some men at this gate. He kills them and begins to chase them as they are trying to capture his son. The brother or trying to successfully capture the son. Two of them get away. No, this isn't. The son isn't. Sorry, the brother isn't captured yet. Spoilers, I guess, for later on. But London calls as Kraven is at this desk of where the other guy escaped. So he's doing some ninja ass shit, that is for sure. And he kills the guy after finding his name in a book list of people that have done some dirty deeds, and he sees this as his little personal Bible of sorts of, you could say it as a death note almost of sorts. Though he's the one who's doing the actual killing. Anyway, we cut to Calypso, who's talking about her funeral for someone she cared for dearly, where the Kraven finally encounters her. He offers the card back, and she's sort of shocked that he has returned. She discovers his action and claims to have killed the person responsible for the death of the person she was in the funeral attendance for. So he goes back to the city and to have her follow him to check on his brother. He offers that said list to her as a potential to work together. We then cut to our main antagonist, a guy with glasses who we learn pretty quickly is Rhino, actually. He already has his powers, and he substitutes it to look quote-unquote normal by injecting himself with some sort of substance that he is led to, and proceeds to do some of his own business, moving up on the ladder of criminal affairs, as it were, killing two men and having the two remaining men shoot out each other to see who's going to be his new henchman. The younger brother, Dimitri, is now a singer in the current timeline, and interestingly enough, right here, he's already called the Chameleon. Now, if anyone knows Spiderman lore, we know that Chameleon has the ability to turn into, well, anybody. So, a shootout occurs in this little meeting where the son is, and he barely manages to survive by hiding out. And the father yells at him again, about what it means to be a man. He tries to get him to hit him, and so on and so forth. So, this is where Rhino learns that Kraven is still out there, and he brings on a new entity called the Foreigner. This is a new enemy for the purposes of this movie. Not a brilliant name by any regards, but whatever. He is brought in, and he has super speed, or some sort of teleportation speed thing going on. Yeah, anyway. So he kills to clean up any sort of mess, seems to be his prerogative, though. So Kraven, meanwhile, sneaks in to see his little brother. And it's his birthday, so that's why he showed up, and the father also arrives on this very scene. And just right after he's brought back to his hotel, he's then now captured, where we see Kraven try to catch up and take the vehicle out. He's unable to quite make it, even getting them to, they switch vehicles to a helicopter. He almost chases it down. He even manages to spear one of the gunmen on the helicopter, but is unable to keep a hold as he is slammed into a buoy. So he makes a call to his father, Kraven does, to see what he has to say. The father won't pay, as the father insinuates that paying is seen as a weakness. Now, speaking of politics, I find that an interesting line, because speaking of people who have said that verbatim, Trump to Biden particularly, paying out, for hostages seen as weak. I have seen, so, this is stuff that still occurs to this very day. So, we already see that the younger brother has a good ability, without any powers, to mimic his captor. The foreigner, quote-unquote, kills Calypso's, one of the men around, vicinity. And he's getting closer and closer to getting to understand, or getting to the approximation of Kraven as well. We go to a different location, Rokrai, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, where he was given information by Calypso to find out where his brother was. She made some contacts, some calls. Stuff ended up being all subversion and a trap, as Calypso's man, as I mentioned, is killed by the foreigner, the in-man. So he's trying to, Kraven is tranking the people in there until until someone manages to get out a sound, and then he goes out full throttle. He sees, once he is outside, out this window, holding a man trying to gather intel about where his brother truly is. He can see quite a fair distance due to his animalistic type abilities, and sees the rocket aiming toward him and being fired toward him, and he dives out with the guy in tow. Of course, that guy dies and he lives. Meanwhile, the foreigner kills 2 more investigator people to, again, make sure that there's no evidence. And we learn from the father himself, or I think it was the foreigner, or Rhino, I forget who says it to Dimitri, that he's a bastard son. I think that's the Rhino who claims that to Dimitri. So, any rate. So, Kraven takes out the 2 trackers that were trying to see, to make sure that Kraven was dead for sure. He ends up chopping them and killing them instead. So he calls Calypso to warn her, since they're on good terms. Meanwhile, we learn where Reno got his abilities from a man named Miles Warren. And he talks about the lore of how it increases strength tenfold and so on and so forth. And the foreigner kind of fucks with Rhino a little bit, even though they're on the same team at this point. Moving in, showing that he could just be where he wants to be and have all the people, the inner teammates, sort of be like, what the hell? And Kraven knows that he's being hunted, though it seems to be a test of an animal that seems to have been apparently trying to get the better of him in some sort of fashion. At least that's what he alludes to Calypso. And Calypso witnesses all of this, of course. So the foreigner explains to Rhino about this flower that has this toxicity that can be used to hopefully get Kraven down long enough to finish him once and for all. So Kraven hangs up after the Rhino gives him a good old call, and we see him at his home base, Kraven, start to take down the men that are enclosing in on his location. Though he is eventually hit by the fear thing, the intoxication that the foreigner was talking about. And of course, why wouldn't his fear be of spiders? Spider-Man, obviously. That the allusion to that concept is obvious, pretty spot on, if anything. Though, obviously, Spider-Man is not in this movie as well. So, he's still looking for his brother. The brother is with the Rhino, obviously, currently, at his current conjuncture. And the Kraven gets all these Buffalo to charge in on their location. And Rhino and Kraven go 1-to-1 in battle, where Kraven spots a weakness in Rhino's skin in a particular location. He goes full Rhino mode here, by the way. Which, a lot of people said, oh, it looks terrible, blah blah blah. I'm just here to talk about the movie, not about how awful Rhino does or does not look. That to me is irrelevant. It bears no burden on how good or bad the rest of the movie is. So obviously, Rhino is subdued but not killed. The younger brother wants him killed, but Kraven spares him for the time being. Obviously, Rhino is a very known Lord Baird character within the Spider-Man universe, so obviously he needed to live in some form or another, so I guess this is their excuse for that. But that's not the only surprise, as we see Kraven's father, and Kraven has a bear sent after him to maul his father after their talk. So we cut to a year later, I guess, because he says the happy birthday earlier in the movie to his brother, and then here, at this juncture of the movie, he says happy birthday to his brother, so I'm assuming that we've now cut to a year ahead. And we learned off-screen, yes, that the brother went to go see a doctor, probably the same one that was mentioned earlier in the film, as we actually visibly see him turn into the chameleon, so interesting choice to make Kraven and the chameleon relatives. I'm not sure if that's the actual lore of these two individuals. They're lesser-known villains in the Spider-Man universe, so I'm not sure. And as a part of the father's parting gift, he bestows upon Kraven the vintage lion pelt jacket that you typically see him wearing. And that is the end of the movie and the beginning of Kraven as as an entity, as it were. And I will say, among the three of them, again, Morbius, and Madam Web, I would say this is actually the strongest film. Again, not necessarily good, obviously there's still conveniences like the helicopter managing to be there to rescue Kraven, to get him to the hospital, things like that to sort of speed up the process to get us from point A to point B. Because they were, in the jungle somewhere when they were found, so bizarre that there just happened to be a helicopter there, of all places. But maybe you can excuse that because his father is some rich, billionaire sleaze guy doing business, so he probably had air team already somewhere within the vicinity just in case things, went bad or something. So that could be that. I don't know. But, outside of that, I'm trying to struggle as to what else could be the issue here with this movie. And I'm actually struggling to find, really gaps in the story outside of, little bits of, convenience. And again, that convenience can kind of be... You can kind of guess your way to a conclusion that makes some sense to the story. So, yeah, I'm baffled that this, unfortunately, is doing probably the poorest of the three. And it's well, why? Honestly, I would have thought, and here's what I would have done. If I were in charge of, this whole side universe, because obviously this, the Morbius, the Madam Web, the Kravens, they're sort of side characters to the Spider-Man lore. That is where we know them from. And it's not like, lesser-known characters haven't gotten big exposure before. We've seen the success of that before in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm baffled to see these decisions being made in, especially in the order that they are being made in. And maybe it's on top of that, in combination with that, the directors and what level of care they're clearly putting in or not putting in, that is leading to these weird and baffling conclusions, like Morbius being this baffling movie that, is what it is, and then you have even more baffling movie in Madam Web. But I think, honestly, if you started with Kraven the Hunter and just shifted some of the shots where we see, the setup of the helicopter prior, and, really lean into pretty much the rest of the story as is, because again, there aren't that many issues in this movie, honestly. I am struggling to figure out what people are so mad about in this movie, in this context. Again, there are people that are saying this is the worst one, worse than Madam Web. Let me repeat that, worse than Madam Web. And I'm what do you... Did these people watch Madam Web? The people who have said that? What are you talking about? The scale of difference is, almost night and day. Madam Web is a 1 or 2 out of 10. This is at least a middle, a 5 out of 10. This is at bare minimum a meh, even potentially a 6 out of 10, I would dare argue. Again, you would have to fix very few things to get it to that solid 7 out of 10. So I would actually argue that this is actually a 6 out of 10 movie. I'm, again, struggling to find where in the context that this wouldn't be that. And again, I'm just looking at what's in the movie as objectively as possible. So yeah, that's my review of Kraven. If you have not seen it, I'd actually, I would actually give it a shot. And, if you've seen other reviews of it and you think, oh, that's, it's not worth it, I would say that, if you've made it this far into the review, give it a shot. Even after everything I've said, even if I've spoiled, quote-unquote, everything in the movie. Because I do think that this has potential to reconnect itself back to the Spider-Man universe. Because obviously there's that big separation between these 3 movies that I kept mentioning, and Spider-Man. Obviously Spider-Man isn't in any of these. that being a common theme among them. But I do think that there's potential, and I think if this movie had succeeded, we would be looking at a very different timeline. And I would argue, as I mentioned before, I think this movie should have came out first before the other two, Morbius and Madame Web. I think, obviously, Morbius needed more of a rework. I would have focused more on sort of the second half of the movie with his love life. Because that is a big part of Morbius's character in the anime. The cartoon Spider-Man. So yeah, and there's like pretty goofy moments in the previous two movies, and Madame Web even has just wonky, like pretty wonky dialogue. And sure, there's like one or two moments in this movie, sure. I'm not even gonna pretend like there isn't. Like I said, the movie's not perfect by any means, but, like, to say it's on the worst is, again, baffling. Baffling to me. So that's my review of Kraven the Hunter. If you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out the links in the description, and when I head over to my petition to help out small YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server, you can join, collab, shield, all that close stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.